From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
When seconds count.
And I thought, this is how you're gonna die in this freaking bin.
See the effort it took to rescue one farmer trapped in a grain bin. President Biden faces more calls to step aside while Republicans turn up the talk when it comes to trade.
Joe Biden gave China a sweetheart trade deal.
As we enter a key growing period for crops.
I see nothing standing in the way of bumper Midwestern crops.
But the latest drought outlook has some growing areas of concern. Right now on AgDay.
AgDay is brought to you by Pioneer.
Ben's bins, please hold.
Yeah, Ben's has been busy all day.
Seems like no one can keep up with this new Z series. What did you all put in these seeds?
Science.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Key growing areas of the Midwest have seen a lot of rain lately, helping to cut drought conditions, but that could be about to change. A new drought outlook shows a huge expansion of drought is expected in the west, including the western plains. Now take a look at this map. In the east, drought conditions are expected to ease. The areas shaded there in yellow are where meteorologists predict drought conditions will grow. Now the areas in brown, that's where drought will persist, while the west and east coast are both expected to remain hot. All of this means irrigation systems could be working overtime out in the west.
We do expect to see, however, some problem spots developing in the west with developing or expanding drought, along with heavy irrigation demands and potential stress on crops, rangeland, and pastures. Now, looking back at the recent history of weather, specifically in the Midwest at first, it overall has been a favorable growing season, but that's not to say it has been perfect. We have dealt with some extremes. That includes the upper Midwestern flooding of late June, as well as an early heat wave in the southern and eastern Corn Belt that fortunately came before corn and soybeans entered reproduction.
Right now, just 5% of the nation's corn and soybean crops are in drought, while 16% of the cotton crop is in drought, along with 12% of the spring wheat. Currently, about 20% of the nation is in some sort of drought, which is up slightly from last week, but that's the first time we've been above 20% in 4 months. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht has more on areas that have seen some improvement.
Yeah, we'll start off looking at that drought monitor, and we anticipated a decent improvement in this map as we go forward, not necessarily because of what's coming down, but what has come down. Remember, this is the drought monitor that now includes the remnants, the actual and the remnants of Beryl. Back up here into the Midwest where we were holding on to a bit of a drought, that is all gone. Now there are still some extreme spots into West Virginia as well as into Virginia, which we should get some help with that in the next drought monitor, as that rain that we've had the last couple of days will be included in those locations. But yeah, this is the map looking good. Now, parts of Oklahoma also still in kind of a moderate, if not severe drought, but looking a little bit better than what it did just a week ago. We'll talk more about how that rain is going to spread in and across the United States and may get some relief, but things are setting up for a bit of a drier pattern where we no longer have a drought in and across parts of the upper Midwest and the plains. Not something we want to see here. Richard in Columbus, Indiana, saying it's getting spotty out there. Yep, he spotted some tar spots on his corn. He says this is the third year that it's been showing up, but by far the earliest. Hopefully he'll be able to stop it before it turns into a yield robber. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
American voters last night hearing from former President Donald Trump in his first speech since the assassination attempt on his life. Now, Mr. Trump accepting the Republican Party's nomination for president. Meanwhile, more Democratic leaders are suggesting President Joe Biden should bow out of the presidential race. And as Laura Aguirre reports, some sources say the president is growing receptive to such talks.
The Democrat Party is in a complete mess right now.
It's no surprise many Republicans feel that way, but more and more Democratic leaders are sounding that same alarm.
Former Speaker Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, and Schumer have relayed concerns of some members of the House and Senate caucuses
This week, former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi shared troubling poll numbers with President Biden on a private call, showing he'd not only lose to his Republican opponent Donald Trump, but he could also destroy Democrats' chances of winning the House. Several sources briefed on the call told CNN. The president was said to have pushed back, pointing to different polls showing he can win.
Either he has to win overwhelmingly or he has to pass the torch to someone who can't. It's as simple as that.
A growing number of Democratic lawmakers, including some senior leadership, have shared their concerns publicly in recent days, words that may be taking hold. One senior Democratic advisor now tells CNN the president is becoming receptive to talks of stepping aside, even asking those close to him if they think Vice President Kamala Harris could win.
Kamala Harris actually does a point or two better than Joe Biden in some key states.
And if the powers that be in the Democrat Party can convince him to move off, it's going to be a very different race here in just a month, and it's going to be a nail-biter.
For the moment, the president's deputy campaign manager is towing the line on messaging.
The president has said it several times. He's staying in this race.
I'm Laura Aguirre reporting for AgDay.
Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate speaking before the Republican National Convention earlier this week. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance focusing on his personal background, but his speech also included talk about trade with Mexico and China, suggesting a tougher stance on trade with Beijing.
Joe Biden supported NAFTA, a bad trade deal that sent countless good jobs to Mexico. When I was a sophomore in high school, that same career politician named Joe Biden gave China a sweetheart trade deal that destroyed even more good American middle-class manufacturing jobs.
Vance also criticized China's entry into the World Trade Organization back in 2001, linking it to job losses and economic challenges in the U.S., and he pledged to boost domestic manufacturing. It was another wildly mixed day for markets, but Class 3 milk futures were higher. We'll talk about dairy coming up. And later, an incredible story of survival from a Kentucky farmer trapped in a grain bin. For the 11th straight month, the Rural Main Street Index is reading below growth neutral. A monthly survey of rural bankers from Creighton University coming in at 41.3. Now that's the lowest reading since November of last year and down slightly from last month. Surveyor Ernie Goss says weak ag commodity prices, sinking ag equipment sales, and declining farm exports are to blame. However, after falling below growth neutral of 50 for 2 straight months, farmland prices rose to 52.2 this month. Almost half of the bankers surveyed say they would like to see 2 rate cuts from the Federal Reserve this year, 0.25% and 0.5%. Now, there's been better news when it comes to milk prices lately. AgDay's Michelle Rook dives into the market with more on the tug of war between supply and demand in markets now.
Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook with Brian Doherty with Total Farm Marketing. And Brian, we're going to get an update today on the milk market. Class 3 fluid prices kind of hovering around that $20 mark. And, first of all, let's talk about the fundamentals. Still a tug of war between supply and demand here, right?
A lot of tug and war as of late. We had some good punch over $20 and quickly that erodes and then we drop off and then there's new buying and cheese prices rally. So there is a lot of tug and pull here, and the expectation is that as we move further into summer, and believe it or not, you start talking about school and then you start talking about holidays and things like that, that we'll find support from our traditional purchases of cheese and stacking of cheese. But the momentum that I think some traders were hoping for, that they'd see $22, $23 milk, it sure looks like that's behind the market. We're seeing enough supply to limit rally potential that degree, unless demand just really is hand over fist. The dairy producer right now, and I think perceptively, is you're looking at cheaper corn prices, so there's less and less reason to think that, boy, we're going to tighten this herd in.
Yeah, we've seen that in the past. What about the technicals? You are a little concerned about the charts and what they look like right now.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of back and forth, right? But if you kind of step back a little bit, there's a formation on some of the charts. And as I look at this, I get a little bit concerned. It's called the head and shoulders, whereas you look at like a person or a silhouette, you've got a left shoulder, head, right shoulder, and we've completed the right shoulder on a lot of contracts. So the thought process is if prices break under what's called the neckline, where you basically take the shoulders and the neck and draw a line across, that's a pretty negative picture. And you only have to look over into the corn market where there was an intermediate, which means a short-term head and shoulders, and a larger picture head and shoulders, and the market has gone to a T right down to those objectives. So I do put a little faith in what's called self-fulfilling, that if I see it, and Michelle, you see it, and basically everybody else sees it out there, that's reason to sell a technical, and that might in itself, if supplies are a little heavier, be the catalyst that push prices downward. So I do have concerns with that, and I think dairy farmers should be somewhat aggressive to defend that.
Okay, thanks for that advice. Brian Doherty with Total Farm Marketing. We'll have more Ag Day coming up.
Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rourke on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
To discuss marketing strategies, call 800-334-9779.
As we looked at that drought monitor, I want to show you kind of that flooding potential going forward. Not expecting significant rainfall over a large portion of the United States, rather pockets of some heavy rainfall, about 15 to 40 into New Mexico, 5 to 15, then back up into Iowa, the Dakotas, a little bit into Nebraska, possibly into Missouri as well, as this, again, the green grows a little bit into our Friday and Saturday. And then, of course, you got a 15 to 40 where we've been highlighting some very heavy downpours, not only on Thursday, but for Friday as well, about 15 to 40 into North and South Carolina, extending back out here towards the south with about a 5 to 15% chance of some flooding. As I mentioned, by Saturday, this starts to move a little bit more into Missouri, hanging out into Oklahoma. Not necessarily rain chances, but this is the flooding potential for those locations, still including the southeast, where we could have some of that more Gulf moisture moving in, and Atlantic moisture as well, moving across those locations. By Sunday, the chance of flooding 5 to 15. It's all green across the board. We still need this pattern to break down. It is hot. It is dry off on the west coast and to the northwest. Hopefully by this time next week, we'll be talking about a slightly different pattern. Until then, there's a look at that high pressure, I should say the ridge in the jet stream. Bit of a shallow trough continuing to work through the United States. By Saturday and Sunday, pocket of cool air will be hanging around. Again, this pattern isn't shifting all that much. This circle up there is moving to the north, but we keep the same air mass around most locations. So what you had on Thursday and what you had on Friday, extend that forecast into your Saturday and Sunday. A similar story out here towards the west coast as well. We'll start off with Craig, Colorado, partly cloudy, high around 91 degrees. Bunkie, Louisiana, rain, thunder, high about 84 degrees. And how about Texas? Brady, Texas, mostly sunny, high of 94.
Taking a look at the latest in technology, Kloss unveils a really big combine. Check out its new Lexion 8900 TerraTrack. It was unveiled this week at the Ag in Motion Farm Show in Saskatchewan, Canada. Kloss says the combine is well suited for large-scale, small grain operations. It has a 779 max horsepower engine featuring a 510 bushel grain tank and a 5.1 bushel per second unloading speed. While the machine is new to North America, it's been offered in select regions around the world since 2019. And crop intelligence is getting into more AI. Taranis announcing the launch of an AI-powered agronomic engine. It's called Ag Assistant. Company leaders say it will enhance the speed, accuracy, and quality of service agronomists can provide to growers. It can analyze and put information into context using weather maps, machine information, university research, and crop input companies. It then takes all of that and combines it with Taranis' Gen AI model to detect threats in a farmer's field. Now, technology is popping up everywhere, but it's still no substitute for safety. Up next, we're off to Kentucky to find out how this Kentucky farmer survived being trapped in a grain bin for more than 6 hours in the country. It's happened again in farm country, another person needing rescue from a grain bin. The incident you can see here occurred in Isabella County in northern Michigan. A man had fallen in a bin filled with corn. Rescuers were able to remove the corn around that man and, as you can see in the photo, install a shoring container to help get him out. And we're told the man was not seriously injured. At last report, there were 42 fatal and non-fatal grain entrapment cases in 2022, representing an almost 45% increase from 2021. Now, I spoke recently with a Kentucky farmer who has a newfound respect for the grain bin and is putting a focus on safety first. These are the precious moments Doug Omer nearly missed.
We thought we were being safe, and we let our guard down for a second, and it almost cost me my life.
May 4th, 2022, Doug and his father Mike started the day hauling a couple of loads of corn. The first load went perfectly, and Doug spent a few minutes at the top of the bin waiting for the truck to get back.
When I pulled in on second load, he was sitting up on the nest. I said, "I'm going in the bin." I said, "Okay."
Typically, just an 8-minute job. Doug eased into the bin to watch for clumps that might clog up the works. A rope was there, but he didn't tie off.
I guess we'd run probably 20 seconds, and I hear this shh. What is that? And I turned around, and here it come. Well, I was somewhere top of my boots in corn, and when it hit me, it took me about to my bottom of my pockets and moved me about 20 foot right over the hole. I was right there. I was one sheet over that, right there. Oh, wow. We weren't too far apart. He was hearing me.
I heard a big bang, and I thought a bucket come off the leg.
And I'm not real smart, but I knew I didn't have enough Doug hanging out for 8 minutes. So I'm beating on the bin. Well, it's getting up in here and starting to kind of mash life out of me. And me and Jesus had pretty damn good talk. And I thought, this is how you're gonna die in this freaking bin. I got down to about right in here, and I had already laid my head back to give me a few extra seconds, and I hear it most every night, that breaker kick on top. It's kind of a shoom.
Everything stopped. Doug was trapped, buried, and fighting for breath as the pressure squeezed the life out of him.
It seemed like a split second he was up there. He said, you're in bad shape. I said, I'm in bad shape. He goes, I'm coming in. I said, you can't come in. You come in here, I'm a dead man. I said, you're gonna bury me when you come in here. You gotta stay outside.
Instead, Mike called 911.
Hello, 911. We got him uncovered and he did up with it, but we just can't get him out. We tied the rope onto him, and we gave him two real good tugs, and we couldn't even shake him.
Once Logan got me where I could breathe, I wanted to call my wife.
I answered it, and it was Doug, and he said, I just called to let you know that I'm drowning in the grain bin. And I'm like, what?
I said, if things go bad, tell grandkids and kids that I love them and I love you.
That started a 6-hour race to save Doug's life as more than 200 emergency personnel, neighbors, family, and friends worked to pry him from death's door. Crews brought bin rescue tubes that they had trained on just the week prior.
Them tubes are only 28 inches wide, so I'm pretty snug. And they went to digging.
A battery-powered cordless drill drove a 3-inch auger, pulling grain slowly out of the tube. With enough corn moved away, a team of 3 grabbed Doug's harness and pulled.
And I went screaming, you move me, you move me, you move me, and instantly it hit me again. They moved me about 6 inches. Well, they felt that. Again, they hit me a third time. Well, the third time, I'm standing up inside the tube.
Everybody started cheering, and it took him a while to get down the steps, but he walked down each step.
His family met him at the bottom as he was ferried to a life flight helicopter standing by in a field near the bin.
Come here, Pumpkin.
2 years later, the gift of life continues, thanks to hundreds of unnamed hands.
And you don't think your hometown people can be heroes? But they was our heroes that day.
And if you ask them their advice for other farmers working around grain bins,
don't think it can't happen to you. He's around them all of his life. And it's that one instant that almost got him.
Just stand back and look at it before you bail in there. I mean, Most farmers, they're all self-employed, and you get wound up and get in a hurry.
Taking time to think about safety, even on small jobs, could be the difference between a quick end and a long and happy life. And our thanks to Doug Omer and his entire family for sharing that story with us. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day on Farm Country.